I'm rambling. I haven't filmed a video in a while, can you tell? Hey everybody, my name is Sam. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing my January and February wrap up because I didn't do individual videos. So here you go. Sounds fun, doesn't it? In the month of January, I read 13 books, and of those 13, 8 were for the Tome Infinity and Beyond readathon. With those 8 books, I managed to finish all of the challenges for the readathon and establish my own galactic empire. So I'm just going to go through my Tome Infinity books first, and then at the end of those, I will maybe put up an image of my challenge tracker so you can see which books met which challenges, because I just don't have the mental capacity to go through and list them all right here, right now. Sound good? Cool. That's how we're doing it. The first book that I read for the Tome Infinity and Beyond readathon was Semiosis by Sue Burke, which is about sentient plants. And you know, a bitch loves a sentient plant. I cannot explain in words how much I love sentient plants. This book was just a good old time. I liked it a lot. It was like a survival story that took place over multiple generations, and it was about people trying to establish a colony on another planet and them developing a relationship with the plant life. I gave it 4 stars. Next for the readathon, I read A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers, which is the second book in the Wayfarers series, and I loved this book. I think this one might be my favorite of the 3. It was just really emotional, and I really connected with the characters in this particular story, and I liked the way that it kind of loosely tied to the first book. It made me so happy. I was so happy the whole time I was reading it. Even when sad things were happening, I gave it 5 stars, obviously. Next, I read Oryx and Crake by Margaret Atwood, Megan from Tome Infinity's host pick for this readathon, and I really liked this book. It's like a dystopian with like biomedical engineering, and it's really hard to describe, but I really enjoyed it, and I actually think that I will get more out of it if I read it a second time. But as it stands, I still thought it was great. I gave it 4 stars. Next for the readathon, I read Space Opera by Catherine M. Valente, which was just a wild ride. It was like Rock of Ages meets Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and it was just like a blast from start to finish. I listened to the audiobook, and I definitely recommend that. It was just like a really good time. I gave that one 4 stars. Next, I completed Red Rising by Pierce Brown. I don't really probably need to describe that book because like most of BookTube has read it, but like it was great. I really liked it. I gave that one 4 stars as well. Next, I read Record of a Spaceborne Few by Becky Chambers, which is the 3rd book in the Wayfarers series, and this one was probably my least favorite of the 3, but was still excellent. Becky Chambers has just like the most amazing way of writing characters and of using character-driven sci-fi to comment on the world around her, and I love it. I gave that one 4 stars. I would say like 4.5. Like I said, it's my least favorite of the 3. Both of the other 2 were 5 stars, but like still, really solid book. Loved it. Next for the readathon, I have Dawn by Octavia Butler, which was Megan and Sue from Spinebreaker's host pick for the readathon, and why the fuck did I put off reading that book for so long? It is everything that Megan and Sue have ever claimed it is. It's like a social commentary on race and gender and sexuality, and it's all told with aliens, and it's just fan-fucking-tastic. I gave that book 5 stars. And finally, for the readathon, I read Saga Volume 3 by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. Saga was Kayla from On the Fritz's host pick for the readathon, and as always, really solid comic series, really enjoying it. 4.5 stars. All right, so that is all of the books that I read for Tome Infinity and Beyond Round 2. Like I said, I will insert like an image here of my challenge tracker so you can see which books I used to fulfill which challenges. The only thing that I wasn't able to kind of naturally fulfill was cyberpunk or steampunk. really wasn't feeling it, so I decided to fill it in with one of my host picks. So other than Tome Infinity and Beyond, I read 5 books in January. The first of them, I reread The Love Machine by Jacqueline Suzanne. I've talked about that book before. It's like an old showbiz story. It's all a bunch of corrupt people, and it's like a weird twisted romance. I love it. I love that book so much, even though it's like, it's got flaws, like for sure, but I just have a really big nostalgic attachment to it. Next, I reread Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows by J.K. Rowling because in December, I just like got in a mood and decided I wanted to listen to all of the Harry Potter audiobooks. Then I reread 2 other books, The Wedding Date and The Proposal by Jasmine Guillory. I've sung the praises of The Wedding Date a lot. I really enjoyed that book. I didn't like it as much the second time I read it. Like the first time I read it, I was so enamored, gave it 5 stars. This time I didn't think it was like perfect, but I still really liked it. I had a really good time. I gave it 4 stars. The Proposal is just like a light, fluffy rom-com with some shared characters. And then finally in January, I read Trial by Fire by Josephine Angelini, which I read as part of the Trial by Fire read-along that Sarah from Novel Serendipity was hosting. And I liked certain things about that book. It's a YA fantasy, and the magic system and the general concept of that book are really interesting. But there were just some things about it that didn't quite sit right. I didn't love the love interest. I found some of the characters to be a little bit like annoying, I guess. Not like actually annoying, but just not particularly relatable for me, which is a problem I run into a lot with YA books. I just don't relate to teenagers anymore, but I gave it 3.5 stars and I do intend to finish the series. I actually read the second book in February, and that's a good segue into my February wrap up. So in February, I read 12 books, and I'm just gonna jump right into it. Like I said, I read the second book in, I think it's called the World Walker trilogy. The second book is called Firewalker, and I felt similarly about that one. Then I read Adulthood Rights by Octavia Butler, which is the second book in the Xenogenesis or Lilith's Brood trilogy. Again, fucking amazing. 5 stars. Why have I been putting these books off for so long? Nobody knows. Next, I read Dumplin' and Puddin' by Julie Murphy because I watched the movie for Dumplin' and it just like captured my heart. I've watched that movie like 7 times in the last month. It just like does something for me. I did not like the book as much as I liked the movie. It was much more of a romance and much less of a like girl finding herself story. So I gave it 3 stars. Puddin', which is a companion book to it about one of the other characters, well, 2 of the other characters, was also fine, also 3 stars. Next, I read Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton, and if you want to hear more of my thoughts and some other wonderful people's thoughts on that book, you should check out the live show that we did on my channel last week. Next, I read We Sold Our Souls by Grady Hendrix. I buddy read this with Abby over at Abby Mac Reads, and we had a really good time reading this. It's a really, I don't know if fun's the right word, but I'm gonna use it anyway. It's a really fun story about a guitarist who used to be in a metal band, and then the lead singer of their band made it big and everybody else kind of like faded into obscurity. And it's because it turns out that that lead singer sold the rest of the band's souls for fame and fortune, and it's filled with a bunch of music references and like lyrics and just hilarity and gore. I gave it 4 stars. And then after that, I just like totally ventured out of my normal reading habits because I filmed my Out of My Comfort Zone book tag, and I was talking about my love of Jennifer Weiner books and how I don't normally read a lot of general women's fiction, but her books just like do something for me. And so then I got in a mood to revisit those books, and so I listened to like a lot of her books. I listened to Little Earthquakes, which is about a group of women from very different backgrounds who all enter into motherhood at the same time. Good in Bed and Certain Girls, which are duology, I guess. I think there's only the 2 of them. Good in Bed is about a larger lady who finds out that her ex-boyfriend wrote an article in a magazine about her discussing like her weight and her insecurities with a national audience, and then things kind of just like fucking spiral out of control. Certain Girls takes up about 13 years after the end of Good in Bed, and it's about her relationship with her daughter. Then, I was still in the mood for that kind of book. I listened to P.S. I Love You by Cecilia Ahern, which I've read a lot of times. I gave it 3 stars. It's not good in an objective sense, but it's emotional. I like it. And then after that, I got into an even weirder mood and decided to revisit some childhood favorites. So I listened to The Face on the Milk Carton and Whatever Happened to Janie by Caroline B. Cooney, which are the first 2 books in a 5-book series about a girl who is at lunch in her school cafeteria and looks at the child on the back of the milk carton, like the missing child on the back of the milk carton, and realizes that it's a picture of her. Those were favorites of mine when I was in like middle school. I loved them so much, and honestly they still hold up pretty well. If you have like middle school aged children or like nieces and nephews, I highly recommend those because there's a mystery and there's a lot of like character development from the beginning of the series to the end. They're really good books and I like them a lot. I gave those 2 books 4 stars. Let me know if you've read any of these books, or if you participated in Tome Infinity and Beyond. Did you achieve a galactic empire, or did you stop somewhere along the way? Just talk to me in the comments. Have a great day, guys. Bye.